Assalamu alaikum dear students. I hope you all are fine and safe. I am Dr. Ali Tirmizi, your teacher and guide of Corporate Governance course. Today we will discuss chapter number 14, that is Alternative Models of Governance. The main topics that we will cover in this chapter are listed in the next slide for your reading and understanding. I hope you will find this video lecture useful to learn and clear topics as well as concepts discussed in the chapter number 14 lecture of Corporate Governance. Class, in this chapter number 14, that is Alternative Models of Governance, the major topics that will be covered starts with the introduction of chapter number 14. Then we will discuss the second topic, that is family controlled corporations. The third topic of the lecture is venture-backed companies. The fourth topic is private equity owned companies, and the last and the fifth topic of this lecture is non-profit organizations. At the end of this lecture, I will share with you the schedule of pending quizzes of chapter number 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 that will be conducted on the Microsoft Teams Corporate Governance class platform online. Also, I will discuss with you the details relating the syllabus of the Corporate Governance course for the upcoming final examination of this spring semester 2020. The list of chapters, including all the topics that are the part of the syllabus of Corporate Governance course, are provided in this lecture and will be uploaded on the Microsoft Teams Corporate Governance class platform online for your understanding and review. We start our discussion of this chapter number 14 by learning about the alternative models of governance adopted by number 1, family controlled businesses, number 2, venture-backed companies, number 3, private equity owned companies, and number 4 is non-profit organizations. Furthermore, we will learn about how each of these types of organizations deals with their own set of challenges relating to ownership, control, and purpose. As a result, the solution they elect are somewhat different from those discussed throughout the earlier lectures as per the book of Corporate Governance, and provide a useful contrast for shareholders and stakeholders in public and private organizations. We will move from topic to topic in this lecture and gain valuable knowledge relating the chapter number 14, that is Alternative Models of Governance. Class, now we will discuss the second topic of this lecture, which is family controlled corporations. Family controlled corporations are those in which a founder or founding family member maintains a presence in the firm as a shareholder, director, or manager. The level of control that the founder or family exerts varies based on ownership level, voting rights, and personal involvement at the managerial or board levels. According to research by McKinsey and Company, family-controlled businesses account for a large portion of global economic production, approximately 70 to 90% of gross domestic product (GDP). While the majority of family-controlled businesses are private, several publicly traded corporations exist. Approximately one-third of the Fortune Global 500 companies are founder or family controlled. Family control among large corporations is highest in emerging markets, and that is equal to 60%. However, even in developed economies such as Europe, family control over large corporations remains high, and that is equal to 40%. In the United States, family control is lower, although still significant. Founding families are present at the management or board level in approximately one-third of Standard & Poor's S&P 500 companies and hold 18% of outstanding equity. The largest family-controlled corporations by revenue, both public and private firms, include Walmart, Ford Motor Company, News Corp, Mars, etc., etc. Several reasons exist why family-controlled businesses might have lower agency problems than a typical public corporation. Founders and founding family members tend to have a large financial stake in their corporation or in their particular firm. So this particular stake lessens the divide between ownership and control that is central to agency risks. On the other hand, family ownership can be negative if family members use the corporation to extract private benefits or seek to influence outcomes beyond their legal voting rights. Evidence suggests that this occurs in some large, family-controlled business groups in emerging economies, particularly those where capital markets are underdeveloped. We can give, we can take example of Pakistan in this case. Research studies suggest that the family-controlled businesses are not well prepared for management succession, and evidence relating financial reporting quality and transparency among family-controlled businesses is also mixed. Class, now we will discuss the third topic of this lecture, which is venture-backed companies. Venture-backed companies are small, high-growth companies that rely on venture capital firms for initial and early-stage equity financing. Venture-backed companies tend to cluster in rapidly changing industries such as technology, life sciences, and alternative energy, where potential returns and the likelihood of failure are high. Because of their risk, venture-backed companies in their early stage lack access to common sources of financing such as bank loans and other public or private debt and equity, and instead turn to venture capital firms that specialized in high-risk investing. The venture capital firm reduces its own risk exposure by investing in a diversified portfolio of such companies with the expectation that a few highly successful investments will offset losses in other parts of its portfolio and result in an appropriate risk-adjusted return. Venture capital firms receive their capital from institutional and retail investors. The venture capital firm establishes a limited partnership with its investors as limited partners and the firm itself as general partner. A venture capital firm typically manages multiple funds or portfolios simultaneously, each with a 10-year average life. Investments are made in the first few years following the establishment of the fund, and capital is returned to the investor when portfolio companies are acquired or go public in an initial public offering (IPO). The venture capital firm receives in compensation a percentage of the profit generated, which is typically 20%, known as carried interest. The unique nature of venture capital investing influences the governance choices of venture-backed firms. Venture-backed firms tend to be tightly controlled by their funders. A typical venture-backed company has a median board size of 4, 2 of whom are members of the venture capital firm. Only 15% of the time does the CEO also serves as chairman. The boards of venture-backed companies are less independent than is the board of a typical publicly traded corporation. Immediately prior to IPO, only 56% of venture-backed companies' directors are independent. Many venture-backed companies do not convene formal audit, compensation, or nominating and governance committees until the period leading up to an IPO, which is initial public offering, and they become a public limited company. Even then, when these committees are first established, they generally are not fully or majority independent. We expect this because they are privately held and all major shareholders have board representation. Compensation among venture-backed companies is heavily weighted towards equity-based awards. According to Compensia, 97% of high-growth technology companies award their executives and employees stock options, and 85% offer restricted stocks. On average, 21% of shares are available for future award under equity-based compensation plans, representing a considerable level of dilution known as stock overhang. Immediately prior to IPO, initial public offering, the venture capital firm owns 54% of the total equity outstanding, the CEO 15%, the top 5 managers 26%, and total directors and officers 63%. Class, now watch an online video relating initiatives of Faraz Khan, the CEO of Seed Ventures in Pakistan.
Well, Seed Ventures is an impact fund that invests in social entrepreneurship. It has three specific segments. One, we invest in the grassroots, the bottom of the pyramid, at the micro level. Second, at the university level. And the third is seed stage startups that are at the growth stage. तो ये तीन segments हैं जिस पे हम लोग invest करते हैं. Along with it, Seed Ventures has got a huge portfolio of ecosystem products and services. तो जैसे incubation centers हैं, आपके curriculums हैं, training programs हैं, capacity building programs हैं. These are the areas that we focus on across Pakistan with various partners, be it the development sector partners, the government, the private sector institutions. So it's the ecosystem build-up and impact investment. Impact, growth potential, founder maturity, and an ability to move away from philanthropy and grants. The ability of a startup to create their own unit economics. That is something very critical for us. Immensely. Especially because of the digital sphere, internet, the potential of these startups have been demonstrated. और उसकी इनकी जो accessibility है to the consumers, both, इसने basically startup ecosystem को transform कर दिया है. And then slowly and steadily, the access to capital beyond bootstrapping, beyond grants. Now there are angel investment communities in Pakistan that are investing in startups. There is institutional capital. Government is putting in a lot of money. At the same time, the global institutional capital like VCs and PEs are looking into Pakistan in an extremely favorable lens, because they have realized it's the sixth most populous country in the world with immense talent and a market to grow. Now, in sari wajuhat ki bina pe, I think Pakistan ka jo growth trajectory hai in the past 10 years has been phenomenal. Recently, Patamar Capital's team was here, and they were comparing the Indonesian market with Pakistani market, and they said, आज से 6 साल पहले जो Indonesian market थी, Pakistan is far ahead of that, and Indonesian startup ecosystem is quite evolved. There are a lot of unicorns there, and they're saying that if the global institutional capital do not participate now, they'll miss a boat. But that's a big statement. I think a number of unicorns coming up. Unicorns everyone look for, but there are going to be disruptive startups who would actually transform the way we conduct our business. They will transform the way we create connectivity. They will transform the agri space. They will transform the health space and the education space. There's a lot brewing up. So in the next 10 years, I think Pakistan would really emerge, in my opinion, as one of the most prominent players in the startup global industry. I think perseverance, along with perseverance, do not underestimate the local indigenous learnings. हम लोग वेस्ट के मॉडल्स को बड़ा फेवरेबली देखते हैं, और हम देखना भी चाहिए क्योंकि बहुत सारी अच्छी चीज़ें वहाँ हो चुकी हैं. लेकिन पाकिस्तान में द वे पाकिस्तानी बिजनेसेस और उनका जो एक्यूमेन है ट्रेडिशनली, वहाँ से भी बहुत लर्न किया जा सकता है. देयर आर बिजनेस कम्युनिटीज हु डू फिनोमिनल बिजनेस. नाउ we need to kind of focus on why those businesses in the past 3 decades or 4 decades have become national businesses. There is a lot of learning there as well. So they need to look at that as well. So, okay, when I was young, my father, my siblings went to private schools. One day my father wakes up and he says that you are going to a government school. And he put me in this Nai Roshni school in a place called Delhi Colony in Karachi. And it was called Ismail Allawala Boys Secondary School. मुझे बड़ा गुस्सा आया था यार, बड़ा गुस्सा आया था. मेरी अम्मा को भी बड़ा गुस्सा आया था. I did not realize why my father did that. But I cannot thank him enough now. उसके बाद I went to all the, top universities and schools, and I teach at various universities globally. लेकिन जो एक्सपीरियंस मुझे इस्माइल अल्लावाला बॉयज़ सेकेंडरी स्कूल में मिला था, जो कि उस वक्त मुझे बहुत बुरा लग रहा था. उस वक्त मेरा ख्याल था कि यार मेरी ज़िंदगी तबाह बर्बाद कर दी है मेरे वालिद साहब ने. I tell you what, the reason I've been able to work in the social enterprise space, a lot has come from that learning that I did not realize. So my schooling was from there. After that, I went to DHA, then I went to University of Lincoln, and now I am a visiting professor at University of St. Mary's. When I was in banking, I was making a lot of money for a group of people. So I said, यार मैं ये पैसे अपने लिए भी बना सकता हूँ. So मैं basically banking से social enterprise या impact industry में नहीं आया था. मैं banking से commercial enterprise और commercial investment side पे मैं आया था. So I created a lot of commercial entities. वहाँ से फिर 2009 में I came across social enterprise and impact का concept. And सर पैसे बनाना तो आसान है, लेकिन पैसे इस तरीके से बनाएं कि आपके कम्युनिटी की बेहतरी भी हो, लोगों की भी बेहतरी हो, and then you make a reasonable amount of money. That philosophy really attracted me, and since then I'm here. The biggest regret that I have is that I did not spend enough time with my mother before she passed away because I was working in London. यार उसका कोई उजाला नहीं है उस regret का. And the biggest happiness, or the biggest accomplishment, whenever I'm genuinely able to make my daughter smile, is probably the best accomplishment I can ever have.
Now, class, we will discuss the fourth topic of this lecture, which is private equity-owned companies. Private equity firms are privately held investment companies that invest in businesses for the benefit of retail and institutional investors. The structure of private equity is similar to that of venture capital. The firm itself is organized as a limited liability company, LLC, while its investment capital is deployed through limited partnerships with the private equity firm acting as general partner. This structure allows the private equity firm to manage multiple funds, each with its own portfolio of assets. It also allows the firm to avoid liability to creditors if an investment in one of the funds fails. Private equity firms invest in publicly traded businesses, privately held firms, and subsidiaries spun off from large corporations. Their targets are generally mature companies that generate substantial free cash flow to support a leveraged capital structure. After they are acquired, portfolio companies can undergo a complete change in management, board of directors, operating strategy, and capital structure. If successful, the private equity firm sells the company either back into the public markets through an IPO, initial public offering, or to a strategic buyer that is interested in the improved operations. The private equity firm retains a percentage of the profit in carried interest, typically equal to 20%, and returns the remaining proceeds to investors. Private equity firms invest in a company for an average of 6 years, at the end of which they are either sold to a strategic buyer, that is about 38%, Financial buyer 24%, other private equity company 5%, or management 1%, go public 14%, or file for bankruptcy in this case is 6%. Private equity firms' governance structure tends to be very different from that of publicly traded corporation. The board of directors is relatively small, 5 to 7 individuals of these type of board of directors. The composition of the board is heavily represented by insider, normally are the executives of the portfolio company and members of the private equity firm that are basically own a majority of the firm of this company, this privately held firm. The private equity partners are closely involved in strategic and operating matters, and the focus of board meetings is on business, financial, and risk management issues more than compliance and regulatory issues. Executive compensation in private equity firms is also larger and more heavily weighted towards equity incentives. The study of Leslie and Oyer in 2009 found that the CEOs of private equity-owned companies receive almost twice the equity, 10% lower salary, but more cash compensation, including bonus, than their counterparts at comparable public corporations. Now class, watch an online video relating the actual working of the private equity companies and funds.
What do private equity firms actually do? Which are the different types of strategies they pursue? And what is the typical structure of a private equity firm? These are some of the questions we would try to answer in this video. Okay, but first things first, why the name private equity? Let's break it down. Private because these are funds that are mainly interested in acquiring private companies that have not been listed on a stock exchange. And equity because PE funds are exclusively focused on equity investments. What about specialization? Can we say that certain PE funds prefer engaging with a specific type of target companies? The short answer is yes. Most private equity firms specialize in deals with a specific type of targets based on the life cycle stage of these targets. Some PEs are interested in young firms with high growth perspectives and a promising management team, while others are focused on established companies with stable cash flows, leverage buyout transactions. In addition, it isn't rare to see private equity investments in distressed companies. Actually, distressed investments are one area of activity where there is some overlap between private equity and hedge funds. Both types of funds could invest in a distressed company, which is public. Hedge funds are unlikely to engage with a non-public firm. The main difference, however, is their investment horizon. A private equity would typically try to acquire the entirety of shares of the target, delist it, change management, introduce measures oriented towards improving financial performance, and then be patient for at least a couple of years before exiting the investment through a sale or a new listing. A hedge fund investment, on the other hand, would likely have a very short-term duration. The hedge fund would buy the securities of distressed companies when they believe that there is a good chance of reselling these securities at a profit in the near term, not longer than 2 to 3 months. This comparison provides a pretty good insight of what most private equity deals try to achieve. Acquire a large stake in a business, preferably 100%, but not less than 50%, position the business for growth, through active involvement, advisory, and if necessary, management rotations and substitutions, have the patience to grow the business, improve its profitability, and then exit the investment in a 5 to 10 year period. Of course, the art of the private equity profession is to bet on the right companies and then successfully provide guidance in order to optimize their chances of being successful. Great! Let's talk about fund structure, shall we? There are two main ways in which private equity firms are typically structured: a limited partnership or a closed-end fund. Limited partnerships are much more popular in the US, while closed-end funds are prevalently used in Europe. In a limited partnership, we have two types of partners: general and limited. General partners are involved with the management of the fund, target companies' portfolio selection, and post-investment advisory. Limited partners' role is to provide investment capital. General partners charge the partnership a management fee and have the right to receive carried interest. This is the famous 2-20% compensation structure, where 2% is paid as a management fee, even if the fund isn't successful, and then 20% of all proceeds after break-even are received by general partners. In some cases, a hurdle rate is added to the partnership agreement, which defines a certain minimum rate of return that needs to be achieved before accruing carried interest to general partners. Limited partners receive all of the fund's proceeds minus what has been paid to general partners. A closed-end fund is different, as it typically involves a newly created entity. Investors provide capital to that entity, and the management firm signs a management contract with the entity. Compensation schemes remain very similar under this type of structure. In most cases, the classical 2-20 arrangement plus a hurdle rate for management, after which are accrued 20% of carried interest. Very well. The typical life cycle of a PE fund looks in the following way: a period allowing for the collection of investments in the fund, which can be as short as a couple of months and as long as 2 or 3 years. Largely, this depends on the reputation of the management firm and the demand for their services within the investment community. Established players in the industry have a significant edge. The next stage of a fund's life is the investment period, which typically lasts up to 5 years. In this time, the general partners or management company, depending on the type of fund structure chosen, would search for suitable target companies fitting the fund's strategy. Once an investment has been made, it would be up to fund managers to decide which is the right way to approach the business and optimize its performance. Advice for management and even management substitutions are very frequent when a private equity takes control. Most PE firms are very hands-on throughout the entire life cycle of the investment. They meet frequently with management and are keen on ensuring that the business is on the right track of being ready to be sold or listed on a stock exchange. Of course, the final stage is divestiture, and understandably, it could last several years, in some cases, even 5. Various factors determine when is the best moment to exit a business. A few examples are general state of the economy, market volatility, and quite importantly, finding the right buyer, willing to pay the right price. Once the entire portfolio is divested, the fund closes, and all proceeds are distributed among general and limited partners in a partnership structure or among investors and the management company in a closed-end fund. I hope this video allowed you to gain a good understanding of what it is that private equity firms actually do. In our next video,
Class, now we will discuss the fifth and the last topic of this lecture, which is non-profit organizations. A non-profit organization is an organization that is tax exempted under the law of a country. Millions of non-profit organizations operate today globally in a wide range of activities that include education, social and legal services, arts and culture, health services, civic and fraternal organizations, and religious organizations, labor unions, and business and professional associations. Non-profits are granted tax exemption status by the United States government to encourage the pursuit of charitable and social activities unrelated to commerce. As such, they have a stakeholder rather than shareholder orientation, and this influences their governance system. The board of directors or board of trustees is responsible for oversight of the organization, including reviewing strategy, finance, and performance of these organizations, hiring, firing the CEO, and setting compensation. They are also subject to the same duties of care and loyalty that governs public company boards. Because non-profits are stakeholder oriented, the board must establish the standards by which organization's success is measured. While financial measures play a role in organizational success, the board must determine non-financial and qualitative measures to assess whether the organization is meeting its mission. The CEO rarely serves as dual chairman, doing so only 3% of the time. The CEO sits on the board only 54% of the time, often as a non-voting member. Most directors are not compensated for their service. Most non-profit require that board members make personal donations, and a significant number equal to 42% require that directors personally solicit funds on behalf of the organization. The policy of requiring directors to donate or raise money is known as a give or get policy. Considerable board work takes place at the committee level. The average board maintains between 5 and 6 standing committees, and these may include an executive committee, which generally meets prior to full board meetings to review major issues and make preliminary decisions, a fundraising committee, a finance or audit committee, a governance nominating committee, and committees for programs, marketing, and strategy. Now we'll discuss schedule of quizzes for corporate governance course revision. These are all the chapters which we have covered earlier in terms of recorded video lectures, and I hope that you have reviewed all these recorded lectures. The detail relating quizzes of chapter number 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 to be conducted on Microsoft Teams corporate governance class platform is which I will conduct in the next 2 weeks. The names of the chapters are Executive Compensation and Incentives, chapter number 8, Executive Equity Ownership, chapter number 9, Financial Reporting and External Audit, this is chapter number 10, The Market for Corporate Control, this is chapter number 11, and Institutional Shareholders and Activist Investors, this is chapter number 12. So you have to cover all these chapters, and I'll share with you the schedule of the quizzes related to these chapters on corporate governance Microsoft Teams class platform online. So start preparing for all these chapters for the quizzes. Now class, I'll discuss with you the syllabus for the final exam of this semester, spring 2020. As you know, and you already have been gone through all the video lectures as well as the lectures we have covered in classrooms. So we have covered corporate governance chapters that are number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 14, which are being covered as per the course outline which I have shared with you in the first lecture, orientation lecture related to this subject in this semester, spring 2020. But the most important chapters that I feel must be included in the syllabus, and these chapters are more relevant to the course of corporate governance for the final examination related this semester 2020 are: number 1, the chapter that is being included is chapter number 5, Board of Directors, Structure and Consequences. Second is chapter number 6, Strategy, Performance, Measurement and Risk Management. Number 3, third chapter is chapter number 8, Executive Compensation and Incentives. Fourth one is chapter number 9, executive equity ownership. Fifth is chapter number 10, financial reporting and external audit. And the sixth and the last one is chapter number 11, the market for corporate control. I advise all of you to cover all these chapters thoroughly so that you prepare yourself very effectively for the upcoming final examination of corporate governance in the next month. Class, that's the end of the lecture relating chapter number 14 of corporate governance. Also, we have now completed the syllabus of corporate governance course. I hope all of you have gained knowledge relating topics and concepts covered in the lecture as well as chapters covered during the semester. Now you all are encouraged to review this video lecture as well as video lectures of earlier chapters covered during the semester and ask questions on corporate governance Microsoft Teams class platform. So that's the end of the course, and now start preparing chapters as per the final exam syllabus I discussed earlier with you relating the corporate governance course. Good luck for your revision quizzes and the final examination of this semester, spring 2020. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.